We are live. If you're looking for basketball in this show, I'm sorry, you're not going to find it. We have a very special guest in the house today. We have the head honcho, Mark Rogers himself. Mark, welcome to Indiana Hoosiers Live 36.
Well, it's great to have you guys on board at the Voice of College Football, first and foremost. If anyone's familiar with what we were doing with the Indiana channel prior to you guys coming on board, certainly we were just starting, just getting it ramped up, just putting some content out there, and you guys have just been exceptional about being consistent with the live content, with the recorded content, and more important than that, the quality of the content. So we've seen the numbers increase based on you guys and your commitment to the team, the commitment to the fans, the commitment to the content. And so thank you for making it pay off. And I'm excited to see what not just happens with Indiana football during the season on the field, but also what you guys are going to do with this and how your community is going to respond.
We appreciate the words. Absolutely. And yeah, we're excited for the platform and just to be able to, have this outlet to talk to people about Indiana football every week, especially with, we would be doing this anyway, talking to each other across the phone. So it's like to be able to have these conversations out in front of other people who think the same way we do has been really exciting. So like, we're excited we're in the dead period right now, technically, but there is no off season here at the Voice of College Football.
There's no off season. We should probably, I don't know. That's a good idea. Maybe add that as a tagline.
There is no off season.
We're full of ideas here. I wanted to start off kind of with like an Indiana Hoosiers Live, I guess, reoccurring segment. Kind of started back in the Sigs Inside days, but Brad, obviously from the West Coast, Pac-12 guy, lots of football knowledge up in there. So we would run the Pac-12 memory of the week. And so Brad's got a name for you.
Yeah, it comes a little, usually we bake it in organically, but it was coming around a lot on the feed today was Marcus Tuiasosopo, first ever player to get 300 passing yards and 200 yards rushing in a single game. Did it against Stanford. And yeah, I just want to shout him out. Former interim head coach for Washington himself, after the Sark departure. And I just want to give him a little shout out. One of the OG dual threat quarterbacks out there. Pac-12 memory of the week.
With a little bit different of a voting outcome by AP writers and the coaches poll, more college football fans would be aware of Marcus Tuiasosopo today because there's certainly an argument that he should have been quarterbacking in a national championship game in the year 2000 when his team beat Miami head-to-head. And there was a three-way tie of sorts to line up opposite Oklahoma for the 2000 national championship game, BCS title game. And Miami, Florida State, and Washington were all 11-1. And so Miami beat Florida State, but Washington beat Miami. So who do you think the BCS spit out? Well, of course, Florida State. So a lot of Husky fans can argue, and rightfully so. And I bring this up to Miami fans all the time because they'll run down, we could have done this and we could have done that, and this could have been another championship, and they bring up 2000 all the time, and we beat Florida State, we should have been in that game. I go, no, wait a minute. Washington and Marcus Tuiasosopo went 11-1 as well.
Yeah, you could argue maybe that was the first domino to start what is now the College Football Playoff Committee. You could argue as that being probably year 3 of the BCS era, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Funny how we got here. All because of Marcus Tuiasosopo.
I'll maybe when we start talking about the book, I'll give it 1998 a bit of a shout out from a Big Ten angle as well. The very first year there was controversy and a difficult selection right out of the gate.
Well, I mean, if it's just going to lead into it, let's just roll with it. Let's talk about the book, Disputed National Champions. Like, where did the idea come from? Obviously, you're a college football junkie. So how did you end up from like staring at the 2000 national championship going like, that's not right, to Disputed National Champions?
Yeah, well, I'm the guy that, I don't know what you want to call me, athlete / nerd, both combined. I guess there are some of us out there, but I was a guy in high school that played athletics. I played football, played baseball, but I was also a nerd. I was also the guy that, man, I don't know if you guys have heard the stories. There used to be a Sunday newspaper. You get a Sunday newspaper, And
I used to read the Sunday paper.
there you go. Okay, you guys have a few years on you, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah. We're
We
not
got
that
people
young.
running. We got people running around that look about your age range, but a few years younger that don't remember these things or never lived through it. But the Sunday paper would come out, and it just so bothered me that I was a huge baseball fan, that the baseball stats that were printed every Sunday in the newspaper were through Friday. They didn't include Saturday's box scores. So I'd sit there with a notebook on Sunday and add Saturday's box scores to the rest of the stats to update them perfectly to Sunday. So I was that guy. And with college football, I wrote like a 12 or 14,000 page manifesto when I was like 16 years old, why college football needs a 16 team playoff. So this is like in 1985, I'm doing this. So I was always interested. It struck me pretty early in my fandom in college football at like 8 or 9 years old that New Year's Day was amazing. Everything culminated on New Year's Day, but why is number 1 playing number 7? Why is 2 playing 4? 3's playing like 14. What are they doing here? That doesn't make any sense. It didn't take me long to figure out and catch on to the whole conference affiliation. And most of us bought into it, thought it was great. Hey, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and the regional hookup there, but it caused a lot of issues. So I was starting to question these championships from a very early age because you have a very few number of years that are just clear cut. Like they're the champion, they're undefeated, or an 11-1, 12-1 team that just clearly won the right games and boom, put a cherry on top at the end of the year. You go from year to year and I'm talking pre-playoff. Obviously, the playoff has cleaned up a lot, and I have very little issue since we went to a 14 playoff in 2014. But I'm not the type guy that just takes status quo and, the authorities say this is what it is, that they must be accurate. It must be fair. It must be equitable. Not necessarily. And so I always question these things.
So real quick, before we get into a couple more specifics, do you get into the 1945 national title in the book?
No. So this is a 1990s book. So Disputed National Champions, everyone. I believe the link's down in the description section of this video, all the videos, or you can just go on Amazon and look up Disputed National Champions. So this is the 1990s. And the reason I chose the 90s is I did have a thought that I would continue and go through and do a book per decade and keep it nice and clean and build volumes out. And I basically chose the 90s for 2 reasons. From a marketing standpoint, I just thought it's far enough in the distance that it's nostalgic for a lot of people at a certain sweet spot, but it's also not the 1940s where people are not connected to it, attached to it. So I thought it was a sweet spot from a marketing standpoint, but much more than that, this is the decade that I consider to be the most formative, the most impactful in the history of college football in terms of how we determine a champion. Because as you guys know, the AP poll came out in 1936. The coaches poll about 10 years later. I always forget the date. It's about 10 years later. So from that time up until 1990, nothing ever changed. Now the bowls and the way they were factored in changed, but in terms of just those same institutions just voting for the national champion and everyone taking it, nothing changed. In the 1990s, there was the most just revolutionized the sport from the standpoint of somebody finally saying, okay, let's get 1 and 2 together at least. But of course, the Big Ten and the Pac-10 at the time were like, no, we're playing a Rose Bowl, so don't include us. So it took a few more years to get those 2 conferences. And then obviously we moved from a concerted effort to get 1 and 2 involved to then implement the BCS. And obviously that was then the forerunner of a playoff. So I just considered the 90s to be a great decade to start.
I couldn't agree more about how the 90s were super transformative for the sport. I mean, you talk about the Nebraska teams, just to get a little nostalgic. I mean, Washington and Colorado were back in their days. UCLA was, a team that I grew up following. They were really good back in the 90s. You'd mentioned 98. They dropped that rescheduled game to Miami to drop out of the national title. Who knows where that program would be if they win that game? It's just, super formative year in terms of just revolutionizing where college football is today. And like we talked about before, 2000 was kind of that domino to start what is, the College Football Playoff Committee now.
Think about this, guys. 1998, Tennessee was number one. Now, how they arrived at number one, they were undefeated, so they were a clear number one. However, if you watched the season, it was one of those high wire acts. Like they needed Clint Sterner, the Arkansas quarterback, to fumble without anyone hitting him at midfield to turn the ball over to give them an opportunity to win the game with like 90 seconds. Arkansas is just running the ball out. And that happened. There was a phantom pass interference call against Syracuse that was on 4th down. Ball game's over, the whole deal, first game of the season. But Tennessee made it through. They're undefeated. But who plays Tennessee? There were 6 teams that were 11-1. How do you choose between Ohio State, Florida State, Wisconsin, Arizona, UCLA? I'm missing someone that's 11-1. But of course, that's what had to be done. Choose the team. And the quirkiness of the BCS formula was so strange that Florida State got to go in 1998. They had the worst loss of everyone. They lost to a 6-5 Michigan or Florida State team. Ohio State was consensus number one most of the season, dropped to Michigan State. And so that did knock them out eventually. And what's quirky about the BCS system is that the Ohio legislature just that year forced Ohio State to start playing in-state schools, 1 per year. And that was the first year that took effect. And they had to play Toledo, who was atrocious that year. And that actually has been proven that schedule strength decline of playing Toledo knocked them out of the national championship game. Even though they beat them 59-0, that cost them going to the national championship game.
And I'll
That's
throw this
crazy.
one at you. UCLA was undefeated going into that Miami game. They had the most recent loss. Maybe that had something to affect it too. Miami wasn't as good as maybe they were usually that year, but still lost 45-42 to a solid Miami team, even though they're probably like 8-4 or 7-5, not as good as they normally were.
Yeah, Edgerrin James. That was and like you say, that game was made up from an earlier cancellation. So that
due to a hurricane
was a regular season game played on championship weekend. So we had championship weekend with all these crazy results, and the dominoes were falling. I was actually at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta covering Mississippi State. I was at the SEC championship game in the press box, and an Ohio State fan, but I got to keep that, suppressed. I'm covering the SEC, but I'm an Ohio State fan. And that day, yes, UCLA lost. They were in front of Ohio State. Kansas State was upset by Texas A&M in the Big 12 championship game. And Ohio State needed one more domino to fall. And Tennessee was losing in the 4th quarter to Mississippi State, but Peerless Price and T. Martin pulled it out, and Tennessee moved on.
I can see Brad just like hearing the different player names.
T. Martin, I'm sorry about T. Martin, former receivers coach at USC. I mean, he was one of the best, hottest recruiters at one point, like 5 years ago in the country. Yeah, I mean, that's a crazy name. The year after Peyton Manning leaves, they go out and win a national title. I think always, whenever that happens, that's hilarious.
So Mark, when you're setting up the book, was it something like you're like, okay, I remember 98 really well. Like, let me just go like bang out this 98 chapter, or did you start from 90 and work your way up?
Oh, I'm a pretty simple-minded guy. So yeah, I just went through 1990, started with 1990. And it basically, people wonder what it's like to write a book. I'd never written a book and go through the publishing and everything. And actually, I'm not writing War and Peace here, so let's not get it mistaken that this was that difficult to write. So everything involved around the actual writing of the book was the most difficult. It wasn't the actual writing of the book. But I got to admit, yeah, I just kind of like stream of consciousness just wrote all 12 chapters and the 10 chapters of 1990 through 99. Then, of course, I went back, didn't trust myself. That would be stupid to, make sure every score was correct and that what I remembered was correct. But I got a pretty steel trap memory for most of college football history. So 98% of this just came out of my head. But yeah, verified everything. And yeah, it was the difficult portion of this was to work through scenarios and make sure that there wasn't faulty deductions made. I had to kind of review them over and over to make sure, because what I did, guys, and this may interest a few more people to read this, because a lot of people are like, well, that's history and I'm not a history guy. But I didn't want to make it just a history book. So what I did is I took knowing that we're in the process of this sport evolving and continuing to, I took each one of these seasons and I played it out in the future formats. So I took 1990, put it into the BCS, formula and the title game, put it into the 14 playoff, put it into the 12 team playoff, probably made a mistake, but put it in a 14 team playoff. And what's weird to think of is that in 1990, there were no conference championship games. The SEC started, in 1992. So I actually, was listing, and there's a consideration disclaimer here that it's to an extent impossible to do because you don't know what the schedules would have been, but how they would have been altered. But basically, who would have played in conference championship games and all these. And it's just interesting to see who would have been playing in the Big Ten championship game every year in the 1990s. And then who would have played in the Big Ten. So I do it two ways. Who would have played in the Big Ten championship game and each conference championship game as it stood that year. But I also adjust for realignment and then say, if it was now, who would be playing in the Big Ten championship game in 1993, 94, etc. That's fun. And so there's a full rundown of who would have made the playoff in every year in the different the formats that followed. So you've got some crazy group of five representatives. You got Colorado State, you got East Carolina, Southern Miss making the playoffs. And, as you guys mentioned, UCLA was a really good team through much of this decade, specifically 1998. So people that have been college football fans for 5 or 10 years, they'd be surprised who was good and who wasn't good back then, and who pops up. And then I stayed true to the format of we're going to give the top seeds to the conference champions. And that really changes things because you had just so many more independent teams at the outset of the decade, man. Practically everybody was an independent. Miami, Florida State, Louisville, Syracuse, West Virginia, Penn State, Notre Dame. All these teams were South Carolina was an independent. And so it's funny to see like teams get thrown to the back of the line as an independent that were, let's say, undefeated. And you got the old Southwest Conference, and to throw them into the mix. That was what was the most fun for me, is to take all these hypothetical situations.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Looking at, history in the past, like seeing the evolvement of the different conferences, it's pretty fascinating to kind of see, like Virginia Tech in the Big East way back in their day. And kind of seeing, I had a big encyclopedia myself that I kind of ran through as a child to kind of catch up on everything I missed before I was born, back in the day. And another thing I would do was there's a site called What If Sports, and basically you can run like simulations of different teams in different years. So like you can run like 1992 Virginia Tech versus Ohio State 2002 or something like that. You can have them simulate how that game would go. And yeah, it's really fascinating to run through all the different scenarios. So I totally feel you on that 100% as an athlete nerd, as you put it myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is checking boxes for you. The link is right below here. Mark's new Future National Champions, College Football's Historical 1990s Reset. You can get it on Amazon. And like, again, if you find yourself like somebody like Brad, like Mark, who's just pouring over box scores, like an absolute junkie for the sport, then you have to go pick up that book. But I think having talked about the book actually gives us a good perspective, because if people don't like understand your background and who you are, Mark, they're not going to understand the perspective that you have when it comes to college football. And when it comes to a school like Indiana, like we like to joke here that we call it the BC era, the before Signetti. But it's like the school or the program Indiana was pre-Signetti and post-Signetti is stark. So I just kind of want to start with you as the historian, like pre-2020, like November 2023. Were you even looking at Indiana football?
Well, only because I look at all football. So yeah, I'm one of the weirdos. But yeah, people weren't watching Indiana football. It's funny because I have some guilty, I guess I'll call them, or strange rooting interests. So truth be known, everyone, I'm an Ohio State fan, and it actually gets in the way. I don't like it for what I do. I truly don't. People laugh when I follow that up. I've been saying that recently for the first time, but I've thought it for a long time. I don't like being an Ohio State fan doing what I'm doing, because they're in the middle of everything. They're just always in every discussion about elite or who should be number one, or, and I wish they were just, Kansas State, and I'm rooting for Kansas State, and so they never come up. So we can leave them alone, and I can be objective, and I can be viewed as objective, just talking about the teams involved in championship results. But I got kind of this guilty pleasure growing up. Huge college football fan, coast to coast, loved all the conferences, but I grew up in Ohio. And it's funny when people start talking about conference pride, and some people are into it. Other people are like, why do you root for your teams in your conference? That's stupid. Now, I can't explain it, and I don't think there's a right or wrong. People can do whatever they want. I'm not telling them what to do, but I didn't have anyone. I didn't grow up in a sports family. I just did this I just found this on my own. And I'm like 9 years old, and I'm rooting for the Big Ten in bowl games. Like nobody told me to do that, or that's what you were supposed to. I just naturally rooted for the Big Ten in bowl games. And it mattered that, Michigan State lost this bowl game to, somebody in the ACC, and I get upset. It made no sense. I'm like, watching the Liberty Bowl with this, Big Ten pride that, that we've, we're 5-4. We can't lose this game to drop to 5-5 in bowl play, that kind of stuff. So Indiana is part of that. And I think even though Indiana then with the move to division play was in the East, the vaunted East, I always had this soft spot for Big Ten Western Division teams like Purdue and Minnesota, the teams that you'd see play on ESPN2 at noon every week.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Purdue game, the Northwestern
the
Illinois
Purdue
game.
Northwestern game with Beth
Yes.
Mullins.
Yes. And you could
annual tradition.
You can kind of throw Indiana into that mix with those teams as well. And I just thought it was cool watching, a 3-6 team taking on a 4-5 team in the middle or bottom tier of the Big Ten. I was always interested in those teams and those games. So Indiana was part of that too.
So I guess contrast that to you're watching 3-6 Indiana try their best in 4 OTs against Akron, to the attitude and the confidence and the swag that Curt Cignetti brought to this program. I guess the question would be, do you feel like you were late to the party? Do you feel like you gave yourself enough time to understand if it was real? Are you still skeptical? Like, how does Curt Cignetti's Indiana football appear to somebody from the outside, like outside of the Indiana fan base?
I guess to an Ohio State fan is kind of I want to hear about that too. A national perspective, and also as an Ohio State fan. Yeah.
So everybody let Alex's first sentence sink in, that if Akron makes a field goal, didn't they miss they missed a field goal going into overtime, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
That if Akron makes we're talking about one of the 2 or 3 worst programs in the country is beating a Big Ten team on the road. Like it wasn't
good.
Bad.
Yep. Oh,
yeah. And so here Indiana is as a legitimate program. So the first thing Cignetti did was obviously took everybody by storm by making headlines and causing people to click because he's trashing Purdue. And then he throws in Ohio State and Michigan in there. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. What's this guy do? He has no right to do this, but
we were saying that too, in a way,
Well, yeah, I was saying it, but not in a like I'm mad way. I was like admiring it. I was like, that's cool. I like that. This is probably what Indiana needs. And what's the worst that can happen? The worst would be just Indiana continues to be Indiana and he gets laughed out of town in 3 or 4 years, but nobody really notices too much because he goes 4-8 3 times and gets fired. And that's, he's got the Tom Allen, even though we could go into Tom Allen, obviously 2019 and 20 have been really good teams.
Yeah.
But and he moves on, but that's what I think Indiana needed from a psyche standpoint. Somebody who would say, no, we're not going to put up with it. I'm going to instill some swag, some confidence. What we will never know. Maybe you guys could shed some light on this because I'm sure Curt Cignetti as a coach and just a personality better than I do because you follow him all the time and I just pick up on stuff here and there. But I think he was that guy anyway. But I got to think that if he would have taken over at fill in the blank, Tennessee or somewhere, that he's not quite the same guy. He was himself and still is, but also he knows what he's doing. And he knows this program needs this. They're beaten down. They need a leader. They need somebody that's going to galvanize everyone, put them on the map in the off season. And again, I admired it. And then, of course, he backed it up, which is amazing.
Yeah. I think it's like it goes both ways. Like obviously Indiana needed Cignetti, but I think in a way Cignetti needed to go to a place like Indiana when he was going to make his Power 4 jump, because obviously with his resume, it was only a matter of time before he got a Power 4 job. But just like where is it going to be? I don't think he is the same guy at Tennessee or Florida, which are West Virginia, which are schools that kind of, I guess West Virginia is kind of a different story, but I think it's kind of the perfect fix. He's a guy that wants to build. He's a guy that went from top recruiter at Bama on a Saban staff, recruiting Mark Ingram, Julio Jones, and Dante Hightower to taking a D3 head coaching job. Not a lot of guys do that. So to take that risk on himself and go somewhere where he can kind of make something his own, I think is something that he, desires. And when all the hoopla was going around that he's going to be taking the Florida job during last season, I think we were laughing that off because I think we knew that Cignetti, wanted a job like Indiana to really, he's kind of he's an arrogant guy. I think he's a guy that wants a statue at a school. I think he's confident in himself that he can accomplish it. Right. So I think it kind of goes both ways.
Well, that too. And to your point of like almost playing a character, this is something Cignetti has acknowledged in interviews where he's like, he showed up and it felt like the fan base was on life support. So I was like, how do I inject any sort of excitement and confidence into it? Not that he's not a hyper confident, very competitive person. He is, like, very much so. But I think part of what he said at the basketball game and a lot of like the more brazen quotes he had at like media day and things like that, a lot of that was purposeful. I don't think if he walks into a program where like a Tennessee, like a Florida, where it's like you kind of just need somebody to drive the car. Like you don't have to do much of that rawness to fire up the fan base. You just have to go out there and perform. Versus like Indiana football is like you kind of had to like remind people they existed.
Yeah, the fans needed a little spark, especially coming off a season where they go 4 overtimes against Akron, coming off, where there even was a point in time, like you mentioned, 19 and 20, like those were our junior and senior years in college. Like I look back history wise, and our 4 years, we didn't make a single tournament. We're known as a basketball school. Look at that 4-year period when we were in school. That's actually the best 4-year period historically in Indiana football history between 2017 and 2020. Having those, the 8-5 year, and then a year where they're basically ranked top 10 the entire year and kind of, get a little snubbed by Ohio State in the Big Ten title game conversation for another time. But
It was brought
it's
up just the other day. Somebody
funny
brought
that,
it up
and then they had
on my
that
show.
letdown, right? And then it's just like, man, are we ever going to be good? Like they had a little taste of it, right? And I think there's something to Tom Allen walked so Cignetti can run. I think all they needed was a little that spark to come back, and I think because that 2020 year, I mean, it was pretty much it was a football town for a little bit there. We were beating Penn State, we were beating Michigan, and we got a little taste of what could be, and all we needed was a little spark, and Sig brought it. Galvanization, as Jay Wizzle's saying in the chat.
Clark, you said somebody
Allen
brought that up on the show the other day.
I'm sure you guys were Tom Allen fans at the time.
Mm-hmm. It's tough to see him go.
Yeah, he was fun to watch in a different way than Cignetti.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was a character too. Any guy that's going to do laps around the stadium and be jumping up, high-fiving guys and headbutting players that have helmets.
He gave himself a black eye.
Yes, just nuts. The intensity is just to be marveled. It's crazy. Yeah. But Cignetti is funny because when I watch him, I don't know if you guys get the same response. I don't have any investment in what he's saying, so it's just entertainment. But he's kind of he can be I don't like throwing around this word in this day and age because people take it the wrong way. But he's like got a little bully in him, and
for sure,
little
absolutely,
yeah. But he's also sometimes he seems a little awkward, but not in an awkward way, in a way that people are awkward, like they're afraid or timid or shy. No, that's like, it's out there. This is who I am. And it's quirky. It's strange. He's all over the place. It's just fun to watch. I've never not been entertained by anything that this guy has said. Just even the quote, little halftime, coach's interview before they hit the locker room where, on the other end of the spectrum, Jim Tressel's going to tell you when Ohio State was up 41-0 at halftime, we're in a tough Big Ten game. We've got all the respect in the world for Northwestern. And he's buttoned up. Cignetti's in 15 seconds, he's going to say something that's going to just be strange or condescending or something that's going to be funny.
Yeah. Usually about his own team. Usually he'll be like, I was really pissed about a third down conversions. They're like up by 5 touchdowns. He's like upset that they didn't convert that 1 third down 2 possessions ago. Like he has these, it's very obvious he's a football psychopath. And that's kind of where those nervous tics come in. Not so much like you said, not like a unconfident nervousness, but just like, I only care about football. I'm always talking about football. So I might come off a little weird because I'm thinking about so many things all the time. Keys, you frozen?
I believe so.
Oh, it might be frozen. Oh, wow. All right, I'm going to put it to the chat then. I'm going to drive the bus for a little bit. So, Mark, SoCal Hot Sauce, they're giving you a little shout out. Great positive reviews on the book. They're asking which year in the 90s was the most suspect for you? I guess referring back to your book.
Yeah.
What was the specific year? I guess if you had to pick kind of a favorite chapter, I guess which year was the most controversial in your mind?
Yeah. So everyone, when they see the title of the book, they assume that I'm just going through and taking the years that there was a split national championship and saying, okay, 91, Miami, Washington, 97, Nebraska, Michigan, and this is what should have happened. They should have played or whatever. No, it's like every year, almost every year prior to the BCS, I think there's a level of controversy and things to be questioned. And the conclusion of each chapter is basically, I'm telling you who got screwed, who got left out, that had a resume that was comparable to somebody who was invited or had the opportunity. And then also the last thing I leave everybody with at the end of the chapter is basically, what was the lasting impact of this season? Did this propel a dynasty or end a dynasty, or what did this do to change the sport or alter the sport? So when it comes to which ones stood out, a ton of them stand out to me. I do think Penn State got screwed in 1994. They were undefeated, so was Nebraska. And as soon as I make that statement, obviously Nebraska fans or anybody else just thinks that I'm saying that they shouldn't be the national champion. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying because we had this system where we didn't have a playoff. There are years, and I'm in the process, and you'll see it on my channel at some point here soon. We're going to roll up our sleeves and do like a workshop and just go season by season. Where there are seasons like 1977 where you could make a very legitimate argument that there could be 5 national champions. You got 5-11-1 teams, and the way the losses work, they're all losing to each other. And so it's like, who's the national champion? So the Colorado one is classic in 1990, if you guys are familiar. So Georgia Tech is one national champion. They tied a game. They were undefeated. They tied a game. They're playing number 15 Nebraska in the Citrus Bowl. That's their, their national championship game. Meanwhile, Colorado is playing Notre Dame. Colorado that season had 1 loss, 1 tie, and they also had a 5th down. If you guys have run across this scenario,
I know about that. Yeah.
They're in Missouri. The officials mismarked the yardstick.
They're like inside the 5 at this point too.
Yeah. And the thing is, it wasn't one of those deals where you can say they definitely would have lost, because it wasn't like they didn't get it on 4th down and they were given a 5th down. It was that they spiked the ball, one of those downs, thinking it was they thought it was a prior down.
They had, oh my God.
Because they didn't flip it. They didn't flip to 2nd down. So they're thinking they got another play. And so they're spiking a ball that they wouldn't have spiked. So it's not like you can say one way or the other what would have happened, but they scored on the 5th down of the game. And so they really lost 2 games in a sense. And then they get a very questionable clipping call against Notre Dame on a Rocket Ismail touchdown on a punt return with about 45 seconds left in the game that they would have lost. Believe me, they had an option quarterback. They weren't driving the ball 80 yards in 45 seconds. So you could say Colorado won a national championship and they really lost 3 games and tied once. So you get some strange ones out there. So the point of the book, another thing people ask me about, they think that I'm telling people this team is the best team, or this team would have won a game. Nebraska, Michigan, they had to split in 97. Like I'm declaring they're better or they're better. That's not the intent of the book. I'm measuring resumes and results and what's fair and what's equitable. I'm not trying to tell anybody who the best team in the country is every year.
Because hypotheticals are dumb at the end of the day. Remember the whole hypothetical game toward the end of last year? We were the culprits of that. People telling me on social media that Indiana's going to lose by 4 touchdowns if they played South Carolina, which I think is just asinine. But it's just, I don't think that's a good way to think about things, period.
This is the perfect way to outline how college football fans and sports fans process those type of situations. I did a live stream about 3 off seasons ago where we debated the 1997 season, Nebraska, Michigan, and had however many people in the chat and watched the show later. Do you think I had one Michigan fan call or in the chat say that there was any chance that they would lose that game? No. Do you think there was one Nebraska fan who said that there was any way that they would lose that game? No. That
my team's better than your team. What an argument.
I said this is what I talk about almost every day. This is the manifestation of what I talk about, that everybody's this biased. Yes. Yeah.
Love it. And then I kind of have a follow-up because you mentioned like the end of a dynasty. Like what, just coming from, a UCLA kind of junkie, kind of grew up going to, I've been to the Rose Bowl over 100 times. My dad's season tickets kind of introduced me to the game. Maurice Jones-Drew Olson, Mercedes Lewis, the 05 team, my favorite team of all time. Probably won't ever change. That 98 season, how do you think that changed the course of UCLA football?
Oh, boy. Yeah. They would have played in the BCS National Championship game. I just think that everything that marked UCLA football after that, certainly leading into Jim Mora, to me, and we had a guy that would join us on a regular basis, Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football, UCLA grad, had strong connections within the university in terms of how it was run, and a lot of ties to the university. And we would talk about, I couldn't believe at times how the lack of commitment to football and to winning had infested and infiltrated that program, because I just assumed if you're playing big time football and you're this huge university that you're just committed to football. You're on TV every week and you get these big TV contracts. And then I'd hear things like that players just didn't feel like shit. Like it was high school, didn't show up to shoot. Where I went to high school, players would get, kicked off the team if they didn't show up for practice, like guys skipping practice and just crazy things like that. It just went to this place where I think schools like Cal are right now, where there's just an indifference to the commitment to football. And I know Jim Mora went in there and cleaned that up temporarily to an extent. And I really don't know where to read UCLA right now, because I didn't know if this move to the Big Ten would kind of shake them out of their slumber and slap them in the face and say, unless you want your school to be embarrassed by 70,000 Wisconsin fans sitting in the stadium every week, or whoever you're playing, and going 3-9 in the Big Ten, you better get with it. I have always, it's funny to have this conversation, because UCLA has always been near the top of the list of programs that intrigue me. Like I always thought, why aren't they better? Why aren't they in Southern California?
Right in that SoCal recruiting grounds.
Oh my goodness. And
they could be so good.
And I may upset some Indiana fans or whomever that get into uniform arguments, but I have always said UCLA has the best uniforms in the sport.
Oh yeah.
I love their uniforms. And they play.
You won't find an argument for me.
Yeah, the gold helmets, gold pants, the powder blues with the 3 stripes on the shoulder pad. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
When they get on the field with USC, it's just the most beautiful game.
45 seconds, this becomes a UCLA podcast.
Well, I was asking him what was the the decade that kind of stuck out, and Mark explained that there wasn't, they're all very controversial to the point, and then gave the call out to 94. Penn State probably got the most screwed over in terms of just being the one that he called out. I'm gonna give you another question, Mark. This one's from the chat, and that kind of brings us back to Indiana, because we kind of got off course with my UCLA question. Can Cignetti / Indiana be the breakout coach / program in the 2020s that Clemson was with Dabo in the 2010s?
Wow. Yeah, look at what Clemson did. Although, to compare Clemson football to Indiana, Clemson was a top 15 to 20. I'd lean them more closer to 20 all time before Dabo.
Yeah.
They won a national championship in 81. They would consistently churn out, 8-4, 9-3 kind of teams fairly consistently. But of course, Dabo, took them off into elite status for a long, long time. The thing about Indiana is this Big Ten contract, this media contract. So, all other things being equal, and I'm not saying that they are, Indiana's making more money through the media rights than everybody outside the Big Ten. So that's an opportunity in and of itself. I think that I don't know where we stand on the status of Indiana high school football. I think that would certainly help. Not that it's ever going to be a juggernaut or anything.
Ohio's right next door. I think we can figure it out.
Okay. And Illinois, they play some decent football. You got some players over there too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be tough, but man, I don't want to rule them out in any way. And then you got, there's always an argument, at least in some places, whether basketball helps or it hurts the football program. Like they push each other and help and support each other and bring that attention, which helps, or is it difficult to be great at both. And I know Indiana's not great, but obviously that's where their bread's buttered. That's
They're
where
trying to be.
that's what they've been, my entire lifetime. And when I was a big college basketball fan, Indiana's, they're one of the top 4 or 5.
Well, I think you look at Alabama right now, and not that they had the best football season last year. You probably say it's probably their worst year in quite some time. But like in Alabama basketball was a top 10 team in the country last year. Was being picked to be in a bunch of different Final Fours. So I think as long as you're committed to both and you have the financial backing to back it up, I think it's very achievable. Is it hard? Definitely. I thought it was interesting you mentioned the TV contract, because it's funny. One of the first things that Signetti said during his opening presser was like, well, the TV contract stuck out. It's like one of the reasons why Indiana was appealing to him. So it's like, this is somebody who has his eye not just on like what's sitting in front of him, but the entire, like, where the sport's going. And this dude's got his hand on the pulse of the sport. And kind of back to a point we were making before the power went out here. Like, he's just so intense and laser focused and just determined to win that, to your point, like, it's to people who aren't on the same wavelength, it almost seems like slightly off-putting and a little bit like cocky and confident, but it's the dude's got a standard and he just sets it, and it's like it just comes across that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fun. And can Indiana get that accomplished? I really, boy, if 2024 is any indication, with an expanded playoff, and I'm sure we could get into a debate, and we could bring others on to a debate in regards to how legitimate that bid was. I would look at it in 2 different ways. One will be this season, and seasons to come will legitimize that season. But I also think that each season should stand on its own merit. And just because if Indiana some way would go 6-6 this year, that doesn't illegitimize last season, because they're 2 different teams and each season needs to be judged and evaluated. But
to your point, like, if Indiana goes 6-6 last year, I could care less about the legitimacy of last year. We got bigger issues at hand.
All right, let's talk about this season.
Yeah, let's do it.
Mark Rogers, the prediction from you was 9-3. Indiana picked up a win from a couple months ago from the video that prompted my appearance on your show. So I guess I'll kind of start there. It was at 8. It jumped to 9. How'd you end up coming to that conclusion? And is that final, or are you giving yourself a little bit of a runway before you lock it in before the season starts?
That is funny that you bring that up, Alec, because I don't even remember that I went 8-4 or that was my prediction. But now I do. Now
so
that you bring it up,
yeah,
I do a schedule breakdown when the schedules come out, and I kind of give I want to call it more of a projection, like, because people always want predictions. I like breaking down the schedules. I used to rank all the schedules from 1 to 70 or whatever, but it just got to be too involved. But I used to do that every offseason. I love breaking down schedules. So with Indiana, I kind of just eyeballed it and said, this looks like 8-4. Now, what I did this next go around was I started to look at personnel. I get the Phil Steele magazine, I get, other things, and I started to slice and dice. There you go. And
Brad's got his highlighted already.
Nice. Shameless plug here, everyone. We should have Phil Steele on sometime this summer. We always have for about 5 or 6 straight years. And he was actually kind enough to come on 2 times last summer. So hopefully he'll be on here soon. But
I would love to be on that show. Oh my goodness.
he's great. He's great. So once I started to look at personnel, what really turned it for me was offensive line. I thought, okay, this is a pretty good stout group here, and they've made some couple key additions via Colorado and Notre Dame for the offensive line,
and Ohio State and your Buckeyes.
Yes, oh, absolutely. And then on top of that, you also have the quarterback. Watching him play at Cal, I think he's a gamer. I think he's a baller. I don't think he has like high-end NFL talent, but he's like a scrapper. He's an interesting guy. I think he's a leader. I think he's again a gamer, a scrapper. He'll fight, he'll claw, he'll improvise. I like the quarterback edition. So quarterback edition, when I really thought about it, offensive line, and then when I and I got my notes right in front of me when I sized up. All right, their top tackler's back, their best pass rusher, their best corners back, most likely their best safety. Um, it just started to push my thinking. Trying to find a fourth loss in the Big Ten was becoming more and more difficult. So I said, I got to tell you guys that the 8-4 was more like a default. Like, okay, well, obviously they're winning the 3 non-conference games, and I really just this team can't go better.
We'll
than
talk
8
about the
and 4.
non-con after. We'll talk about the non-con after because
Yeah.
I appreciate your thoughts on it, and we'll try and get into how do we fix that. But sorry,
So that's
continue.
kind of where I arrived on 9 and 3. You know,
Yeah.
I really looked at quarterback, offensive line, and top end guys on defense.
Yeah, I love that. We can debate. Have you seen the Mendoza kind of NFL hype though that he's been getting this offseason?
No. So maybe
I've seen him as high as 4 overall.
Oh, okay. So okay. Well, there you go. That backs
what you're saying. He's
yeah.
He's 6'5".
Mine was more like I just didn't think. I'm
Yeah.
like a huge NFL guy from the past. I used to know more about the NFL than college football, but I'm kind of tuned out to that now. So I just assumed he wasn't a big NFL prospect. I was just going over from what I watched with him. I like him.
But I think you nailed it around the head. Like he is a very good leader of men. If you just listen to any kind of the 98 yards with your boys, kind of when he came back on Stanford, and just any sort of interview he's done since he's committed to Indiana. And if you just hear about his story, you know, kind of from a very hardworking Cuban family back in Miami. I mean, he checks a lot of boxes. And then on top of all that, he's a gamer, like you said. And then on top of that, has the 6'5" frame and a powerful arm. Lot of check boxes that he has. And I see the season going as far as Mendoza takes us. And I'm high on him. So my prediction's 11-1. But, 9-3 would be, Mendoza's probably just as good as Rourke, maybe a little worse. Maybe, he's not as good as maybe I thought, right? That's kind of where I'm at. But I think Mendoza is going to be good, hence kind of a higher end record prediction on my end. Keezer, you got more on Mendoza?
Yeah, well, I was going to say a couple of things on Mendoza. One, him and his brother were going door to door selling mangoes in like 6th and 7th grade. Just like pure confidence, not afraid at all. He was hit 50 times last year at Cal. He's not going to get hit that much at Indiana. And then it was funny, Pat Coogan went out of his way to say this, but he makes eye contact with every single person in the huddle. So it's like those things you see of him, we're like, oh, I think this guy could be a pretty good leader. It's like he's literally engaging every single one of his guys. It's like it's almost like it's funny. Like with Signetti, I find myself saying this a lot, and then with Mendoza, I find myself saying this a lot. Is like both of those guys just say and do the right things over and over again, and it's not forced. It's not like out of their personality. It's just like they just act, and it's just like movie-esque in terms of like green flags. It's crazy. So
and then another thing about the O-line, I mean, I'm glad you called them out, because that's a unit that was nominated for the Joe Moore Award, which is the best O-line unit in college football. They bring back 3 of those starters, add in a Notre Dame transfer, add in an Ohio State transfer, then bring in Khalil Benson as kind of that 6th O-line, swing O-line that can kind of play all 4 positions besides center. And all of a sudden you have tons of depth at that position, tons of playable depth, as I like to call it when I talk about the trenches. I'd say, Indiana's about like 8 playable guys with a couple redshirt freshmen coming in that were kind of starting in spring camp this year. It was already a top unit in college football last year, and it's looking like they might even be better than they were last year. And they got, Hemby, who was it? Ellison and Lawton, they combined for 22 rushing touchdowns. It could be a similar type, 5 rushing touchdowns down the middle against Nebraska. It could be the same type of feel with this unit as well. So I'm glad you called them out. And
Well,
by the way, those top three guys, the pass rusher, corner, and linebacker, they were all Americans in different sites across the board. They're all projected all Americans this year, obviously, given their, accolades last year. So I mean, I see this team as nothing short of loaded, to be honest. So with the schedule, 9-3 isn't crazy in my opinion. It's still an over at 8.5, but yeah, totally respect your opinion, but just let you know, I think we're a little more loaded than you're giving us credit for. I think there's a little bit of Indiana brain is kind of what we call it on this show a little bit. So yeah,
it's funny because you like look at Indiana and you're like, well, last year was magical, but there's no way they can repeat. And then you look at who they brought back. To your point, it's like they're bringing back a lot, but you start to go position by position with this team. And it's like you start with Mendoza, and it's like NFL buzz, whatever, but it's like absolute gamer. Like they got a check mark at quarterback, they have a check mark at offensive line, they have a check mark at defensive line, check mark at linebacker in the secondary. Like the receivers, like the love Elijah Surratt's getting right now is insane. Like and that group is one of the best, most underrated in the country. And then to hear, like Brad was giving me the rundown of Phil Steele and like how he's talking about the different position groups, and to hear somebody like Phil Steele talk about those position groups the same way that like I perceive them is that gives somebody like me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, Phil Steele has Indiana's receiving core as number 9 in the country, bookended by Oregon and Georgia this upcoming year. So I mean, they're loaded at the weapons room. I mean, that scheme with Shanahan, they're going to be a much more open playbook with the mobility of Mendoza too. They're going to do a lot more, play action, a lot more rollouts, get Mendoza out of the pocket, make a play. There's just a lot more to work with this year, as opposed to, you got a solid pocket passer, super efficient Curtis Rourke, but Mendoza might be able to take him to a different level.
Yeah, they're playing a game right out of the gate in the Big Ten that people are going to look at as, okay, who's for real here? And whoever wins this game, we're going to continue to watch them. Yeah. The other one we're going to forget. Now, I don't take it to those extremes. I've watched too much football and too much sports for too long to write teams off that early. But that's going to kind of be the perception of, okay, we can't believe in both of these teams. We're going to believe in the winner when they take on Illinois. And then going right into Kinnick Stadium after that, obviously the Big Ten scheduling right out of the gate is key.
It's not kind. The schedule is tough. It's funny to talk about Illinois because it's like we look at. I did the like schedule comparison of like teams when Indiana like played versus Illinois and versus Iowa, and they like the point differential that Indiana put on those same teams was just. It was actually, I think they beat those teams worse than they beat the teams in the non-con last year. So it's like, did those teams make up that much ground, or did Indiana get that much worse? It's like, it's hard for me to see that, but it's like going to Iowa is always a challenge. Like Illinois, to your point, people are going to be like, whoever loses that game is done. It's like, those actually might be 2 top 10 football teams that play early in the season. Like if Indiana wins that game, like I'm not writing off Illinois. That team's might have been properly ranked. And I'm the one saying Indiana's misranked. So it's like, to write somebody off that early in the season is crazy. But again, another one of your points, like this Big Ten schedule is not doing Indiana any favors. Home for Illinois, at Iowa, bye week at Oregon. It's like, so we can get into the non-con now and kind of how to fix that. But it's like, it's hard for me to hear like Indiana's schedule is so easy when it's like, those first 4 conference games are about as hard as you can possibly get.
Yeah, it's a good thing we got 3 tune-up games, to figure some things out before Illinois. Just let's throw a couple 50 burgers on the board, and then we'll get into Illinois and get in a dogfight with them, which I think it will be a dogfight, even though it's at our place. And I don't want to get too comfortable because we did blow a ton of teams out last year, so I can't be just expecting that week in and week out. Would be nice to blow out Illinois, but I do think they're going to be pretty solid. I like Altmaier. I think he's an absolute gamer. They got a couple good DBs that are coming back. But when I think stack them up against the personnel against Indiana, it's just like every position group, Indiana just has a slight edge. I'm taking. We can call Mendoza Altmaier a wash, but I mean, I'm taking Roman Hemby. I'm taking our receivers. O-line is where it could probably be, there's probably a heavy debate there, but I mean, we got 3 All-Americans on the defense, each level, and I don't think Illinois just doesn't have that. They have good players. Xavier Scott's a very solid player, but I mean, and Brett Bielema coach teams. They're going to play good defense no matter what. Yeah, I can't wait for that game, and I think Marky nailed on the head where it's like Indiana wins, it's like, oh, maybe Illinois wasn't that good, and then if Illinois wins, it's like, oh, Indiana's bad again. It's like. Yeah. It's a lose-lose for either team. It's
with those two teams, the winner won't get the level of credit that they deserve. It'll be more about, well, it was about the other team not being that good.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah. All right, let's fix non-con scheduling across college football, because I have to be honest. When I hear your comments about Indiana football, my guard goes up, right? I'm like, oh, I got to defend it. And then I hear, like, you just started the series, like, you should be embarrassed, which is like the YouTube shorts you're putting out, which I'm a huge fan of. And the first school you attacked is Penn State. So it's like, I can't sit here and be upset when everybody's getting the smoke. So, I mean, I'll just give you the runway to kind of talk about your problem with the non-con, because I feel like you're going to hit the nail on the head for a lot of people. And then kind of maybe we bounce around some solutions.
So, clearly, there's a difference between what any particular school should do based on their self-interest and doing what's best for them versus what should be done overall in the sport. Those are two different things. Indiana has objectives, and Indiana circa 2023 and before was survival. Get to a bowl game, make some extra money, make it look like a really good season. Do what's in the best interest. If there are no guidelines or parameters for scheduling non-conference games, then do what's best for you. So I don't have an issue. There is a poke the bear mentality to those shorts, and I'm going to get to everyone. Rutgers, you're up, and some other one. Yeah,
Penn State got it already. They got it.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I just want to be clear about that. It's like when I attack Notre Dame and get on Notre Dame about it not being in a conference. I'm not blaming Notre Dame. They do what they can get away with. I have no issue with Notre Dame. They act on the best interest of Notre Dame. They're not the problem. The problem is college football, not holding them accountable and forcing them into a conference. So the same thing lies true for Indiana. They're doing what they think is what's best for them. There should be rules in play. I think that the non-con should be completely taken out of the hands of the schools, and there should be a formula that's driven by a committee. I think there's just too many teams to give it like this NFL formula approach. I think there needs to be a committee involved, but there should be equitable non-conference scheduling across the board. I don't think that Indiana should be playing what we're seeing the last 2 years, and other schools, and USC should be playing Notre Dame and LSU in 2 out of 3 non-conference. Like, the inequity of non-conference scheduling is just crazy, but that's what's going to happen when the schools schedule themselves.
100%. Well, you have a school like Ohio State's going to play Texas in week 2. Like, awesome. Penn State plays Villanova and like 2 schools I literally forget. Like, it's like
FIU, Nevada,
and then you're like, yeah, Penn State's the number 1 team in the country, and Ohio State, who knows what the talent they have leaving and questions at quarterback. Like, if they win 10 games, but one of those losses is to Texas, and they're potentially on the outside looking in because of their harder non-con, like, that's where ultimately I could see people having problems. So it's like, I full blown agree with you. Like, the issue is not what the individual teams are doing to abide by the rules and look out for their best interest, but it's like, how do you not have like it set in stone, like the Big Ten and the SEC are just playing each other, like one team, or have like those conference games where you have like Power 5 teams on the schedule every year. It's good for the brands of both teams. Like, it's good for the fans. It's like, yeah, I'm going to watch Indiana play Kennesaw State and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. But like, it's like a low stakes, borderline meaningless, like get through without injuries and look good type of like showcase versus like actually how good is my football team.
Yeah, I think a big elephant in the room, and Jeffrey beat me to it, is Big Ten SEC challenge. I mean, it's two conferences. It's clear. Like I see it as, I know it's Power 4. I see it as Power 2, especially with the acquisitions of the 4 best programs from the Pac-12 into the Big Ten, and then SEC already considered the best conference, getting the top 2 schools from the Big 12. It's very obvious it's Power 2. I think college football fans would eat it up. I think it'd be awesome if Indiana could play South Carolina, and and then we'll put our money where our mouth is here. And what are your thoughts on that idea?
So, from the standpoint of forcing everyone to play a difficult non-conference game, check the box there, and then obviously just the entertainment factor, check the box, and then the rivalry factor of the 2 power brokers in the sport settling things on the field, playing like what we see in basketball, just a full Saturday of 16 versus 16 teams. It would just be insane. It would be phenomenal. That somewhat flies in the face, somewhat. Not all of it could be played under my system of bringing a level of equity to the non-conference play. Because what people want to see is they want to see Ohio State play Alabama or whomever you would choose to be the number 1 team in the SEC.
And
they want
Indiana
to see
would get like Mississippi State, like no.
Yeah, in typical years, Indiana would play Mississippi State. Indiana now, maybe it's a Tennessee, it's a South Carolina, somebody like that. So that's actually not equitable. It's not fair that the best teams have to play the best teams. But I'm not going to get into the whole how I would schedule it. Yes, that would be phenomenal. I'll just state it that way. Yes, that would be great. Would love it.
Maybe like a little random generator. We got Vanderbilt versus Michigan, and then randomly we'll get Purdue takes on Bama. I mean, that would still get a gauge as to how these conferences match up, even if they are a little mixed matched a little bit. Obviously, we don't really want to see Bama play Purdue, but I think where I'm getting at a little bit. Just kind of equity. I think it's the important word. I think
we get 3 non-conference games. If the SEC would ever get their act together in the ACC and actually
don't get me
play 9
started.
games. So 3 non-conference games. I just want to make sure that the end result of those 3 non-conference games are as equitable as possible. You can't predict the future. Obviously, teams get better and they get worse. So if Alabama has to play Ohio State, well, then they get a real break in the other 2 games, or it's balanced. So we could have those games under my. I've rolled out a system in the past that would ensure as much equity as you could possibly instill without being able to forecast the future. And just to answer the way you guys set this part of the conversation up, the problem with the entire sport is nobody runs the sport. The sport is run by the conferences. You don't have in the NFL, the NFC East doesn't run their division and do whatever they want for their best interest, and the AFC South does something different and all over the place. No, they're all working under one company. They're all focused on what's best for the NFL. That's all that matters. And what gave us the best indication of how this sport is run and how it operates is COVID, the pandemic year. The NCAA, they were nowhere to be found. We had no idea what they were doing. It was the SEC basically said, we're playing football and we're going to bring in every expert possible to figure out how we're going to approach this. But we're going to play football. And the Pac-12 was running scared in the opposite direction. We're not playing football. There's no way we're going to play. And the ACC and the Big 12 basically said, well, if the SEC can do it and they're going to do it, well, they kind of followed suit. And the Big 10 was the most interesting to watch because you had academia say, no, we're not playing. No, we got to lock down. But the fabric of the footprint in the Big 10, the coaches, the players, the fans are so pro football, meaning not pro football, but pro playing football, that there was this struggle that was really massive to watch. And obviously the football side of it finally won. But that was on full display as to this is how this sport's run. Now we get to see who really runs this sport. Well, each conference runs its sport. It's not Greg Sankey's responsibility to look out for college football. He looks out for his conference. That's what he's paid to do.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. So I guess when, you're commissioner of college football one day, Mark, I would like a job. That's all I got. That's all I would like to help,
We can figure that out. Absolutely.
All right, Mark, I'll leave you with one final question to piggyback off of kind of there's no central power in college football, because I feel a lot of the same way. The biggest development I've been watching that has been getting borderline no attention has been the development of the college sports committee and then the appointment of Brian Seeley to be the CEO. So is this something you've been following at all? Because it's, to me, he's going to end up being the disciplinary figure for college sports, and it's not going to be long before people know who he is. But how are you kind of viewing that situation?
Yeah, so that is, as you state, the most under the radar important move that's been made in the sport recently, or maybe in a long, long time, that didn't get a whole lot of play because nobody knows who he is. And I don't think most people can't really figure out, okay, who is he replacing, or what is this? What is he going to do? But yeah, that's that. And the Big Ten and the SEC being, they're almost like the United States and the Soviet Union in World War II. It's like they're allies, but they're always got their eye on each other. Like, I don't trust you at the same time. So
their self-interests align just enough to be friends, but not enough to like each other.
So yes, they formed this committee that they're going to look out for the sport, fix the sport, address these things. And they know that the other one's just as powerful. So they can beat down on the Big 12 and the ACC. And basically, as long as they agree, they can tell them what to do. But they got to first agree and check with each other. And they're having trouble with that with this playoff. So that's another relationship I'm looking out for as well.
Brad, you got any thoughts on Brian Seeley?
I think Mark nailed it on the head. I think there's just a lot to be seen in terms of what's he going to do? What impact is he going to have? Are we going to go super conferences? Are we just going to do away with it? I would personally, I wouldn't like that. I kind of like the brands at the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, RIP, the Pac-12. I mean, I guess we're coming back with Texas State. I mean, that's huge for us, being the Pac-12 ambassador here. Yeah, I'm just curious to see kind of what the format is going to look like, and if we're going to standardize, are we going to go 8 conference schedule? Are we going to go 4, 9? Is that going to be standardized across all conferences? Just, I'm more of in a wait and see with the Mark Seeley. Did I get that name right? Is it Mark Seeley?
It's Brian Seeley.
Brian Seeley. Apologies.
SoCal Hot Sauce said, Mark, 75 minutes still go, and reach out if you want some free hot sauce. I do feel like we've taken up more than a lot of your time. So, Mark, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Again, you're more than welcome to hang out if you want. Like, if you want to stick around, we got a couple like news things to run through and some Indiana football stuff to cover. You're more than welcome to hang out if you want.
Well, I'm going to head out, but man, I appreciate the invite. It was a whole lot of fun to talk Indiana football and hang out with you guys for a while. And again, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And you guys know behind the scenes, whatever I can do personally and the rest of the network can do to boost what you guys are doing. You guys have certainly held up your end of the bargain in regards to, putting together a great product here and building a community. So it's fun to watch.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your perspective, and all that good stuff. And check out Mark's show. He's live Monday through Fridays, 4 p.m., the Voice of College Football Show, or the College Football Show on the Voice of College Football Network. You can check out Mark's book on Amazon, Disputed National Champions. And check him out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all that good stuff. Mark, appreciate you hanging out with us.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you.
Hey, let me know when Phil Steele's coming on. Hell yeah.
That was Mark Rogers, the head honcho at the Voice of
Boss
College
is gone.
Football.
All right, now we
Yeah,
can
the boss is gone.
All right.
It's funny. I like to refer to Brad as the encyclopedia of college football, but Mark is
I
truly
think
an
he outdid me a
encyclopedia
little
of
bit. Yeah,
college
I
football.
think he's just been around a little longer, and some of those years got a little blurry too for me. So I try to
but
make
if you
do. But yeah, Mark is a true ball knower, and I love his perspective on things and how he approaches. I think we think very similarly in terms of the whole like, oh, my team's better than your team. That's a dumb argument. Hypotheticals are dumb. Take the sport for what it is. It's competitive. Equity, right? I think equity is a great word that he used there. He used that a ton. I think that's a great way to kind of see college football as opposed to kind of how some people down south like to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I like to. It's funny. The 8-4 prediction was the whole reason why I went on Mark's show like back a month and a half, 2 months ago when I went on. And like I like to. I guess I'll call it punching above my weight when talking about Indiana football when I think somebody's opinion is slightly off. But you're talking about somebody who's got like a deep perspective of the sport, who's like may at times say things like you should be embarrassed and like go for a little bit more of a headline grab. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, like that guy is a college football junkie and he's like, he knows his stuff. So it's the Voice of College Football Network is a thing because of Mark Rogers. So we're happy to be here.
He's living the dream. I'm jealous, would love to get out of my 9 to 5.
But we got an enormous, this is like a whole second show, Brad. I don't know if we should.
We're going 2.5 hours, baby. We're doing it. You're going to have so many clips to cut.
So many clips. Let's do it.
Just today, have your work cut out for you.
Just today, Indiana dipped back into the Sarasota Bradenton area, going to a high school powerhouse IMG Academy for the commitment of Cameron McCaney, the defensive lineman. He's an Indianapolis kid playing again down at IMG. Pat Kuntz gets another one. The defense in the class of 2026 is absolutely disgusting. They're loaded. Cam McCaney, first thoughts seeing the commitment.
First off, I'm gonna pat myself on the back because I called this commitment like 4 months ago. As soon as I heard he was visiting, I was like, "Oh, we're getting this guy. There's no way we're letting him out of our claws or jaws or whatever you want to call it." Talking to Jamie Jordan at the IU Reactionary, I think we both had the same sentiment. Sometimes we disagree, but I think this time we agreed very heavily on what this type of player is. He's a true nose guard, 6'1", 315. Basically, think Tyreek Tucker. He's got Tyreek Tucker vibes to him in terms of getting penetration on the O-line. That's probably the strength of his game, as well as being a very solid run stopper. Just curious to see how he develops as a pass rusher throughout his time. He's watching tape very clearly. I mean, he's playing high school ball and he's a D1 commit, so obviously his run stop, his gap fills are very good, and he's just a man amongst boys. But I mean, it's a guy being trained at IMG Academy, and those guys, tend to at least be contributors in college, not necessarily go to the NFL, but at least make themselves very valuable to a football program. So just getting another Tyreek Tucker-esque player, I think is a huge for Indiana as they continue to just load up on D line. It's by far the room with the most scholarships that they give out. I think they have. I'm going to do a quick math here. They have about 16 on scholarship right now. So, I mean, it just fills in what they've been trying to do and really just beef up that D line, focus on development. And like you said, or not like you said, but like we've been saying, one thing that really, I think I've just been thinking about this all day and thinking about these commitments. Like one thing Signetti does really well is kind of evaluating based on how their football instincts are, not necessarily what their measurables are. Obviously, that's going to be important if you want to play at the Power 4 level. But I think he does a really good job just evaluating based on instincts. And you see it there. Like he's shedding blockers the right way. He's recognizing where the run is, and he's a good football player. So it really just comes down to getting in that weight room. He's already, good news for him, he's already at 315. So it just has to get.
If anything, he might be going down
and kind of just learn the playbook. Really, I mean, this is a guy that could. We look at that D tackle room. We have Ratcliffe and Wheeler leaving next year. That leaves Tucker and Landino likely to start. I don't think they're going to head to the NFL Obviously, depending on what kind of season we have, if we win the national title and go undefeated, Tyreek Tucker might be gone. We'll see. But, we got Kyler Garcia back there, who we really like. Jamari Monette, who's a junior, he's still back there. But lots of opportunity for him to kind of break in there and maybe fill in that kind of 4-man interior D-line rotation year one. Who knows? We could have a Tucker, Landino, Kyler Garcia, McAney kind of rotation in the interior line next year if he can break through as a true freshman. That's obviously huge for any program if you can get production from guys that are 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, and he had a lot of really interesting quotes, including like Indiana fans just sit back and enjoy the show and you're getting a dog, which like again, like fans of Signetti, fans of the talk, like I love it, fire me up. It's like it's speaking confidently and it's you put on the tape and he backs it up. It's like he's one of those guys who like is a 3-star, but it's like that guy's under-heralded. It was like if everybody thinks he's under-heralded or under-ranked, just raise the ranking. You know what I mean? So it's like I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen in the future.
He's the IMG nose tackle.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, I don't know. I don't think he's too unheralded. I mean, 3 stars at the end of the day, like high-level 3 stars are, if you're a top 500 recruit, I mean, you're expected to play power 4 ball. That's kind of just how it goes. And he's clearly going to fit the bill. It's just about getting him in the system and just trusting our coaching staff to get them to where they need to be. And, we see this, given the amount of, going through the Phil Steele book, we might have a pretty heavy NFL draft class coming up this next year. And that could only spark more big recruiting wins like this moving forward. But, it would be nice to get the number 1 nose tackle, but hey, we got the IMG nose tackle. And I guess that's, not going to call it a consolation prize, but I mean, that's pretty good too. You never know. The guys fizzled out all the time, and we're just going to continue trusting evaluation and Signetti when it comes to just overseeing it all. Because I don't think do we have a GM or like a designated recruiting coordinator?
Yes, we do have a recruiting coordinator. I believe it's Mike Ferrara.
Okay.
But I'll have to double check on that.
Yeah.
But no, he wasn't well, to say that like he was a target, like this was a recruiting win. Like, let's not like, I only said that to say like, he's probably a little bit better rated than
I'm just saying like in general, like we're not getting the 4 and 5 stars, like out the wazoo. Like we're seeing like Michigan's on an absolute heater right now. I don't know if you're noticing this, like on the recruiting trail, but Michigan's on an absolute heater. We will get there one day.
A lot of wide receivers in that room, Brad. I'm not counting us out of the Travis Johnson race. I'll say it. I'll say it. I'll look stupid. I don't care. I'll say it. McAney wasn't the only commit of the week, Brad. It was a 3 commit week in total. We got like literally 12 minutes, I think, after we got off the air last week, we got the official flip news of Jay Timmons, which like was pretty much inevitable. Like I guess 60% means 100%. He wasn't Wilt wrong. He was Wilt right. Wilt wrong. That was. But Indiana wasted pretty much no time. Indiana pretty much wasted no time filling that spot. They went and got Jamar Owens, a safety from Georgia. I believe it's Douglasville High School, but I'm not entirely sure. But he is a high school teammate of Cortez Redding, who is another target in the class of 2026 for Indiana. But Owens was a top performer at OT7 the other day over the weekend. And one thing that kind of stood out to me was in his visit photos, there was a picture of him and Hollywood Bell and Byron Baldwin Jr. And it just, I keep referencing this interview with Byron Baldwin Jr. where I committed early to get guys to come here and I'm just going to get dogs to play with me. And it's like I don't like Byron Baldwin Jr. in the LeRon Deuce picture, Byron Baldwin Jr. and Jalen Hollywood Bell in the Jamar Owens picture. It's like these dudes are out there trying to make their team better. And it's like, shout out to those two specifically. Cause like they're like, it's just, these are things that like obviously are good for your program and help your program build, but they're not required. Like these aren't requirements. Like these kids are going out of their way to help their own future. So like shout out to those guys. But what did you think of the Jamar Owens?
Well, awesome that they're quickly able to, get a Georgia DB commit. You just like that. It's like, that's sexy. Georgia DB. Got a Georgia DB to replace the other Pennsylvania DB that we lost, son of a former NFL player. John saying he'll be back before college. I'm gonna say don't count on it for reasons I cannot say. How about that?
I'll say
then,
this. We'll sidebar on Florida
Let's
State
just
real
say we have
quick. 'Cause-
insider info, and let's just
Well,
say,
I'm gonna say sidebar on Florida State real quick.
that's where his
a
dad played. You know, at the end of the
absolutely
day.
disgusting rev share contract that was called quote unconscionable. That essentially gives the university control over how much the player makes and eliminates all their injury protections, and absolutely horrible. So I hope he didn't sign that, or I hope any Florida State athlete didn't sign that agreement. But sorry, continue.
It's all good. Yeah, Jamar Owens, he projects as a safety. I think he has cornerback skills. And when you kind of see that, kind of makes you think this guy could play rover. This guy could be full-time rover. Kind of bring him in that sense. Because he's listed at 6', 175, which is pretty light for a safety. That's like a cornerback size, right? So having that size and that speed with safety instincts while still having that size and speed to allow yourself to not get burnt in the slot and be able to cover man. And obviously zone is pretty, in general, should be pretty easy to kind of get down as a DB. I'm a receiver, so I'm gonna slight DBs from time to time, but yeah, he projects to me as a guy that's gonna be playing rover. It's a very special position, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm wrong all the time. I don't know. I guess I'm not wrong all the time, but I mean, I don't know what's going on in that room, but that's where I would try to maybe start having him get reps at, would be that roaming player that can, kind of just make plays wherever you need to on the field, whether that's dropping back into 3 deep, or it's guarding or it's rushing the quarterback, or if it's, pressing a slot man to man. He can kind of do it all. So getting Jeff, I'm surprised Jeffrey knew that I was an X. That's something. That's something there.
It's quarterback.
I was an X.
That's a quarterback's mind right there.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. QB1, Jeffrey. But yeah, no, Jamar Owens, big get. I mean, just we're killing it in the South, man. We're getting Florida, we're getting Georgia. I remember back in the Tom Allen days, we got a few guys from the SIP, like Ty Fry and a couple other guys. But the fact that we're getting guys from so many different, just the Midwest, California quarterback, we're getting guys from the South, several guys from, I think 3 guys from Florida now, strictly in the Bradenton kind of Tampa area.
Sarasota, awesome, Bradenton, baby.
Yeah, there we go.
Let's go.
Wrap up. Yeah, but I mean, it's great to see 20 commits now. In a if people don't know, you typically bring in a class of 25 every year. So the fact that we're already almost done is amazing. It's amazing. With still room to bring in some guys if we want to bring in some extra fellas, depending on the season that we have. Because we keep on saying, like, if Indiana is able to stack another great season, who knows what this class could look like come February.
You mentioned 20. The obviously McCaney was the commit.
Jay Wizzle giving me a shout out.
Obviously McCaney was the commitment that pushed it to 20, but the guy who brought it back up to 18 was HSE's 5-star long snapper Jackson Tolley. He committed to the Indiana Hoosiers. It's a 3-phase game, Brad. Grant Kane's room got better.
We got a third commit?
Jackson, yeah, Jackson Tolley, long snapper, 5-star.
Oh, he's okay, hell yeah, straight up long snapper.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's huge because Mark Langston, who, if you guys don't, OGs will know this, but we were trying to figure out if Mark Langston was coming back forever, and yeah, he's gonna be gone next year. Obviously, we brought in the Lindsay kid as a walk-on, but yeah, he'll probably compete with this incoming freshman, and that's the guy. The walk-on is the guy this freshman has to beat out to get PT, and yeah, it's a huge get. I didn't even know we got a long snapper. That's awesome. We solved the Mark Langston problem. That's awesome. I'm actually fired up. That's huge.
He said it's big time. It's big time.
By the way,
that is big time.
Taking an uptick this year. By the way, I was looking.
Yeah,
we're about to add 3 yards average to our punt this year with McCarthy.
Well, what about the Radicic was not that he was like
He was
he was
looking young.
limited in range last year, and
Yeah,
now
he's
like
looking
banging out his mediums.
The Croatian, yeah, he's ripping his shirts is what I'm hearing in the weight room. His hang cleans are at like 315 now, but
there are a couple other
huge for the special teams, huge. Yeah,
there are
Cole's
a couple.
speaking. Thank you.
A couple other recruiting notes just to kind of keep an eye on. Well, first of all, Jacob Savage, who's a athlete linebacker commit from Kentucky in the class of 2026. He was clocked at 17.5 miles per hour, running at a 20-degree incline. Dude's just a freak. Like I said, Travis Johnson, he picked up a bunch of crystal balls to Michigan. I just there was a tweet his mom sent out about like her experience with the Indiana coaching staff. And so like, I'm just kind of like holding on to that until he officially commits. His commitment date is 7-4. Again, like he's got like 12 crystal balls to Michigan, but I'm just not going to pull us out of that race until it's over. Nick Reddish will commit a week from Friday. He's a safety target in the class they've been after for a little bit. He's got heavy Notre Dame ties, so we'll see.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of Notre Dame buzz from him, which is kind of crazy because he's like one of those 3 stars, those niche kind of 88,
he's a 4-star,
87 to 89 rated on 24/7. He's a 3-star, so he's still like that kind of niche 3 to 4-star range that Indiana kind of likes to target in order to just build bigger classes sooner. They're at the end of the day, they're building a great foundation. We're gonna miss some guys. That's just what happens when you're in the Thunderdome of recruiting, high level recruiting. So as long as we're just able to finish, top 20, top 30, top 25 in this recruiting class and kind of set that foundation as, we're going to need another big portal year after this season, no matter what. So, just the facts that we're building this foundation over the past 3 classes, they've all been very, very strong, considering all things considered, what they've been having to deal with, starting late, bringing in Tom Allen guys, and then starting late on the 2025 cycle, and then finally being able to start ahead of time or at least on schedule for 2026. And look at them, it's July 1st and they have 20 commits. I mean, it's unbelievable. I haven't seen anything like this from Indiana. Like, yes, they used to bring in some high level recruits, but in terms of the amount of commitments they would have, they would never get to this number this early with Tom. As good of a recruiter as he was.
There was a bite-sized bison graph that he posted yesterday. That literally details exactly what you're talking about, of like number of commits, like June,
really
by June 3rd, by July 1st, after July 1st in total, and all of the Signetti numbers are like, shoom. So it's.
I was just going off feel. I didn't even have any numbers to back myself up.
You can just look up.
I have myself in stat correction territory.
You can look up Taylor from Bite Size Bison, or you could just look up @by Taylor L, and you can find his page. But he does a lot, like Bite Size Bison does all like analytics and a lot of like offensive charts, and he does good stuff. But yeah, literally just kind of detailed
24/7.
I haven't seen him on any of the sites, but he announced his commitment. And then there was Jerquaden Guilford, receiver from Fort Wayne, who was set to commit last week, postponed his commitment. He was picking up crystal balls to Ole Miss, I think, which seemed kind of out of left field. So the fact that he pushed his commitment back, probably good for Indiana. So just something to keep an eye on.
Okay. Yeah, and Travis Johnson's committing when? That's the big one.
Friday.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. No. Obviously, we know D'Angelo Pond's good. He was
speaking of ex receivers, Travis Johnson. X.
Obviously, we know D'Angelo Pons is good, Brad. He was mocked 28th overall to Baltimore in one of the latest ESPN mock drafts. I had a lot of people in my comment sections telling me that he was wasn't good and too small and blah blah and all this stuff. And it's like, it's clear you guys don't watch football. And it's like, okay, lo and behold, he's being mocked in the first round. Shout out to Buffton Prime. Shout out to T-Cal, who has been screaming this from the rooftops for as long as like I can remember. Is like, yeah, the dude's
forever.
Legit.
That's kind of how he got claim to fame, was being on Pond so early.
100%. And he's one of three preseason All-Americans: Pons, Kamara, Surratt. I believe there was a fourth on Phil Steele as well. Is that right, Brad?
What?
Fourth All-American on Phil
Steele? There are 4 All-Americans on the Phil Steele, Elijah Surratt, and obviously the big 3 that are coming back on defense: the the 3 former All-Americans, in different, whether it be FWA, Football America, different, organizations have All-American teams. Kamara, Fisher, Pons, 4, 5, 6, all got accolades in some capacity for an All-American honor. So having all 3 of those guys back, just huge. And Surratt's getting all this buzz. He's a top 5 rated receiver in the video game. That's awesome. Yep. It's gonna be so fun to play with.
Yeah, actually, we can go there next. Indiana, I had the ratings wrong last week, so I guess I'll do a mini stat correction. But
wait. Side note: remember when I mentioned to Mark that I saw Mendoza go as high as 4 in a mock draft? Like his eyes, just like I think we shifted something in that because he didn't know. He didn't know there was like actual like legit multiple sites out there saying first round. But we talk about Mendoza all the time, so we'll move on.
Well, actually, no. We can talk. Like there was a CBS Sports article about Mendoza where John Tatley said he could be the biggest quarterback pickup of the offseason. There was a couple interesting quotes from Mendoza in that article, though, and one of them was that he felt partly responsible for the mass exodus at Cal, where after he left, Ott left, and Endries left, and partly he's right, but what are you going to cry over spilt milk? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I remember reading that article because it was kind of just about Cal and how. I feel like I called that out 2 months ago when it was all going down. Like that's the Mendoza effect. Your quarterback leaves, he's a stud. It's hard to replace studs. Like you can find a new quarterback, but you can't replace studs. And the fact that all his weapons left, all the running backs left, all the tight end left, the receivers left, and it was just unbelievable. And unreal. But I think it just speaks volumes on what we're going to be seeing from Mendoza. And I've been hearing from people close to the program that he is better than Rourke. All right, just taking quotes. Just taking quotes. I'm hearing ropes. He just throws a ball on a rope, the perfect spiral, those types of things. It's just beautiful here. You can just see the difference. Like I know it's practice, but you can when you see it, you see it. You just kind of know. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said to Mark, we're only going to go as far as Fernando takes us, right? So, is he going to live up to the hype? If he doesn't quite live up to the hype, might be we're still going to go 8-4. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're still so solid around as a team. So, yeah.
Yeah, we got officials college football 26 ratings. Indiana was the 11th overall offense, the 14th overall defense. There was 89, 88 respectively. Somehow that spits them out at an 85 overall and the 18th best team in the game. And ahead of Illinois
I'll
for
take
what
that.
It's worth.
That's a little bit of respect there.
Ahead of Illinois.
Because they could have done us so dirty and been like, oh, it's Indiana. We'll just put them at 79, 79, 79 again, like they did last year. And but they didn't. PK saying we need a receiver. We got Coop, we got EJ Williams, we got Johnny Brady, we got Davion Chandler coming on campus real soon.
LeBron Bond, Miles Kendrick,
Kai Jackson's gonna be healthy again. LeBron Bond's gonna get some tick this year. I have a good feeling. We'll see what we get from Kendrick and Becker. I didn't realize Kendrick's listed at 6 foot. He can probably play a little outside. He's not necessarily a given slot. He might be a more well-rounded receiver than I was thinking originally, but he got that number 82, so maybe he's not ready yet. But he could be
nothing wrong with 82.
Hey, nothing wrong with it. I'm a single-digit guy.
From college football 26, Brad, to college football 14. If you've been paying attention to the channel, for a couple of weeks, shout out to Chris. He's been running the streams, the NCAA 14 streams. Indiana hasn't lost in these yet. They won at Oregon. They won by two. Right now, but I love it. 2 touchdowns. This is a ridiculous talking point. It means absolutely nothing. But they won by 2 touchdowns at Penn State, and they just erased 2 touchdowns. Yes,
they won by 2 touchdowns in the fake football game. That's sick.
Yes, yeah.
That answers my question. I think Jeffrey was asking earlier, like where do we think our thoughts are when we go to Penn State, where we go to Oregon? I've said this on the show multiple times. I think we're going to Oregon. I think we're going to win. I don't think it's. It might be close. I'm not going to say. I think we're going to go to Oregon. We're going to win.
The title of this show is
I think it's tough to win in Penn State, period. Like even if they were like 6-6, I think it's just tough to win there.
the title of this show is No Self-Imposed Limitations, and partly that was because I was going to argue, and we ended up not even getting into any real kind of argument with Mark about the 9-3 prediction, because like it's at the end of the day very respectable, but it's like I'm not going to sit here and put a cap on this team. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're not going to Oregon and win. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they can't go to Penn State and get it done. Like this team will go as far as they'll go, and I'm along for the ride, but I'm definitely not going to cap them.
I redid the depth chart in my notebook recently. I mean, we are loaded. When I told Mark we're loaded, like I was holding back a little bit. Like we are loaded. Our 2 deep on defense is.
I thought that was funny. You're like, I'm just letting you know, we're loaded.
We're loaded. I'm telling the Ohio State fan that we're loaded. Classic. Like he's like shaking in his boots. Like I don't think you realize this is a world where Ohio State, like, they don't make the playoff this year. Like there's a real world where that happens this year. As much talent as they have, they still bring back. I mean, they bring back guys on defense. They bring back the corner. They bring back the corner that gets called for holding like 5 times a game. They bring back Sonny Siles, who's really good. Who I think he's amazing. I think he should go first round as a linebacker. Personally, he is that crazy athleticism. Like remember Jack Campbell? Brad. Remember Jack Campbell coming out? Yeah, he was, but now he plays linebacker because he's like 240. He's that Jack Campbell type, athleticism at that size, which is freakish. You don't
say it with me, Brad. Say it with me.
What?
Seontae Stewart.
Yeah. He looks so perfect at safety on my depth chart right now. So I'm not gonna mess with that.
That dude in the box would be terrifying. That's all I'm saying.
Fair. But I mean, we're just absolutely loaded this year, and I can't wait to let people know. Like there's a chance we go out of that like 3 game. I know we have that soft schedule right at the beginning of the year. I mean, we come out of that outscoring teams like 160 to like 20. Like what do you say to that? That's nothing. What the good teams do. That's what playoff teams do is they come out of that, 160 to 20 against a bunch of cupcakes and, don't really see any struggles. Like people forget, like, didn't Ohio State play like Bowling Green last year? I think they were losing at the end of the first quarter, like 7-0, something like that. They obviously ended up winning by 40, but, this team, you don't see that from this. This team didn't trail till late October. Like, actually, literally, they didn't trail until after the Dodgers won the World Series. Think about that.
That's crazy. Brad, we got Media Day representatives announced. Obviously, last year, Media Day was electric. I was parked in front of the TV for it. I'll probably be parked in front of the TV for it again, but this might be the last time that I'm not there. Maybe. Surratt, Fisher, Kamara, Media Day representatives. I tweeted this out. You're not going to look across the country and find 3 better program representatives than these 3. So yeah, super excited to go see. We got the Kadick ballet story last year. Obviously, we got to learn a lot about Aiden Fisher. We got to learn about Justice Ellison. So super excited for that. And then whatever Signetti quotes we get from that day of press.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Schweb. Well, I mean, yeah, I'll be watching those. It's in Vegas this year, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just 3 perfect representatives. I mean, guys that will be playing in the NFL this time next year. And couldn't think of a better group to bring. Just three seniors. I love that philosophy, bringing in 3 seniors. I know Pons is probably the one who got cut, but he's the one junior of that big 4, right? That's coming back. So, it's probably an easy call for Sig. Bring on the 3 seniors and, Pons, if you want to go to Media Day that bad, maybe just come back one more year. Maybe just stay one more year. Then you go to Vegas, for that Media Day, right? It's so fun. Yeah.
Shout out to those guys. And I got to shout out Brian Galvin. He's I guess like a scout or just a film junkie on Twitter. He's been doing breakdowns, a lot of Indiana ones recently. Kamara, Pons, Surratt. He's been tagging us in all those videos. We've been retweeting him. It's always cool to see those guys get shine. So definitely go check those out if you haven't seen them yet.
Perfect. And then John, people are talking depth charts. And it's like, we're looking at our lads. I like our lads. It's a good reference, but they're not as ingrained as I am. I got Deontay Stewart as my 3 deep as a true freshman. I have him behind Farrell, Moore, Bonds, and Boyd at safety. I have him as the 3rd string safety, which is not bad. I mean, he's a true freshman, right? And then PK's asking where I have Baldwin. And I have Baldwin as our backup rover. I think right behind Boykin, I think he's going to get involved in some way. And that could either be at the safety position or at rover at times. And, he's a very versatile player, just a tremendous football player, period. So he's going to get involved this year. I don't have him as my starter, but he's right there. Like I said, the 2 deep at every position on the defense is insane. You can make a lot of arguments for some of those 2nd string guys to be starters. I look at Gandy. I look at Baldwin. I look at Isaiah Jones. I look at Dominique Ratcliffe. I mean, these guys are all on my 2 deep or on my 2nd string line. And it's like those guys can definitely be starters given just a day, right? Like they could be on a given day better than some of those starters. So just the depth that we have. I saw someone mention that we didn't have any depth. Maybe you can't really even argue on offense. Maybe at quarterback, we don't have the best depth because we don't really know. Throw Alberto out there, the redshirt freshman. I don't, he's probably not going to be as good as Rourke and Mendoza, right? It's probably going to be the most significant drop off. Everywhere else, loaded. Like that's like the word of the day. Loaded. We're just point blank loaded.
Got some quick hitting stuff for you, Brad, and then we could hop into the chat and then get out of here. But it is National Bison Month this month, so shout out to Hoosier the Bison. Big shout out to Hoosier the Bison. Glad to have you back in our life.
I don't even know what he looks like. I feel like it's been too long. He's holding out on me.
Patience is a virtue, young Brad.
I might just tweet at him, like, send me a selfie, something like that.
Tomorrow night,
how I get him to reveal his face is I just ask him for a selfie and he does it.
Tomorrow night,
inside account.
Tomorrow night, Wednesday, July 2nd, Curtis Rourke is going to be on some Blue Jays stream. We're going to retweet it from the podcast account. So Curtis Rourke live talking baseball, probably talking some Hoosiers, who knows, but anything that the Maple Missile does, I'll be tuned into. So shout out to Rourke.
A legend at IU.
An absolute legend. Indiana, the university, signed a licensing agreement with CLC, a licensing agency. In theory, this should allow, it's the first time Indiana's gone outside of house for any of this stuff, but it should allow for better merch. And we've already seen a replica basketball jersey drop for the first time, I think, either in a really long time or ever. I know at the beginning of the show, I said we weren't going to talk any basketball. And that's true for this show. Prince Alexander Moody committed, and he's been like an awesome follow on Twitter. And it looks like a really great kid to bring into the program. We'll cover that in a separate video. We'll talk basketball either later in the week or over the weekend, something like that. But it just felt like we're getting a little bit behind the 8 ball in basketball. So put that to the side for now. What else we got here?
Love a DMV shooting guard.
Yep.
Can you name a DMV shooting guard that played for Indiana in the last 15 years? Victor Oladipo.
I'm not getting crucified by Indiana historians again. I'm the football guy. Leave me alone. Fernando Mendoza, for you gamblers out there, is plus 6,000 on DraftKings to win the Heisman. That's just screaming value. And then kind of the last thing I wanted to get into, Brad, was we hit on it a little last week. It hit the general public when Michael Niziolek released his article about the UVA series cancellation. There was a lot of upset people. There was a lot of Purdue fans upset for whatever reason. There was even Indiana fans were upset for some reason. I thought it was extremely odd. But Virginia is not a school that Indiana is afraid of. Virginia is a team Kurt Signetti literally beat with JMU. Like that's not like canceling a series with Alabama. It's not going to drastically change the schedule.
We're probably trying to replace him with like a better school. It
got replaced with Kennesaw State. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we still have room on that. I don't think that's how it goes. Like, what year is this?
2027.
Didn't they have a home and home? So it's 27, 2028.
I think it was 2029 or something like that.
Hold on. Let me get there. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, yeah, maybe 2027. Yeah, we did replace with Kennesaw State. Oh yeah, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, and UMass. Honestly, let's just keep the big going.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's just
Fuck it, who
keep
cares?
scheduling these cupcakes. Hey, Mark, good news. We got Notre Dame in 2030.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah, well, by that time,
we
they'll
should
all
be
be in the
playing
same
Kentucky.
conference. So.
We should be playing Kentucky. If we have an open spot, just be like, hey,
Brad, Kentucky doesn't want that smoke.
What are you
Brad,
doing? Come over, Kentucky.
Kentucky does not
What are you up to?
want that smoke.
What are you up to? It's been a long time, stranger. Come over. Yeah, like 2026. Oh, we play Colorado State next year. How fun is that? Play the Rams. And we got an open slot.
I missed when John said this earlier, but when we were talking about Mark's book, we said, I hope one of Indiana's 49 wins in the 90s is in the book.
Yeah, John, I usually shout you out, but I mean, that was electric at the time. I should have shouted you out. That was hilarious. I was laughing. Don't worry. That's like, what is that like average? Less than 5 wins a year. Man. Oh man. She Yogi on my Hoosier till it's Farrell. That's good, Jay Wiz. Very nice. Very nice.
Jay Wiz said the Metro Indianapolis area isn't bad on the gridiron. No, it's actually not. The biggest problem that area runs into is the fact that players like Cameron McCaney end up going to Florida.
Yeah.
So it's not as strong as it probably should be. But no, especially if you're just skimming off the top, there's more than enough talent in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the in-state kids they grabbed in this class, like they're doing a really good job.
Yeah, I don't think they brought in 5 Indiana kids by desperation.
No,
I think they evaluated and saw that they're good enough to play on their program instinct-wise and physically. So, yeah, they brought them in. So, yeah, shout out Indiana high school football.
Shout out to Indiana high school football. This is very famously a Lawrence North podcast.
Oh, very famously. Munch on Sales, Showtime Sales.
Are we the biggest Lawrence North podcast, not only in the nation, but the world?
Yeah, because I'm like a huge CJ Gunn fan too. I love
throwback to that's a real deep cut for the listeners.
He still has potential. I saw that put back dunk against Troy.
I'm talking about not only in the nation but the world.
Yeah, probably number 1 Lawrence North. State title 4x1 team. State title 4x4 team this year. There we go. Shout out Davion Chandler. Shout out Showtime Sales.
Shout him out. PK says Purdue shouldn't play anybody over 500.
That was off my.
If you're gonna lose the games anyway, I guess it doesn't matter who you're gonna play.
Yeah, I know. Like they can play Bama,
Oh, PK, I did not see this question. How should Michigan be? He said, "How should Michigan be disciplined or not?" And he was going to ask Mark, and that is a great question. And I'll try and get an answer for you, PK.
Slap on the wrist.
Yeah, they're not getting in trouble. Actually, it's funny if you check the Voice of College Football.
I actually
Michigan
don't think
channel,
what they did was all that bad, to be honest. Obviously, you got to make an example out of them, but like, come on.
The voice of college football.
Play on the field, guys. Like you should, like in theory, like in football, you should know what play you're running on offense and still be able to run it anyways. That's kind of the whole like philosophy of it. So it's really not that bad. But
I was gonna say the Voice of College Football Michigan show is phenomenal. TJ runs that one over there, and they do an awesome job. And so but the way he's been talking about it is like he even made a joke about it today on Twitter, where it's like I thought we were getting slapped on the wrist as like Carter Meadows commits. So it's like there is no there's no punishment for Michigan. TJ's a great follow.
It's not happening. Yeah, and then I'm going to go says it'll be interesting to see how we do at Oregon and Penn State. Sig admitted that going silent count hurt us at Ohio State. 100%. That's definitely what happened. And like they were timing up the silent count and, given Ohio State, JTT, Sawyer, those fuckers up the middle. I mean, we didn't have a shot. And
well, Katie,
I think they're going to be able to learn from that Ohio State experience and be able to move forward. And with this big O-line rehaul that we were able to do, replace Kadick, love Kadick, big upgrade getting Pat Coogan.
Well, he's literally been talking about how he couldn't hear his left guard at Ohio State. Like he just wasn't able to hear any of the calls, nothing. Like in Kadick sidebar on Kadick real quick. His like Barstool content machine is starting to churn, and it's been phenomenal. It may
He's
be
been
the
doing
only
great. He's gonna
person
be on Beach House. How about that?
maybe the only person who could have turned me on Barstool Tate, but like, not that I wasn't like, I secretly respect Tate because of how good he is at what he does, but like obviously he's a grifter, and so it's like he's posting shit to piss me off. But it's like I've become a fan of Barstool Tate through Mike Kadick. So it's like the Kadick content machine has been incredible. But like he's literally said like he couldn't hear shit at Ohio State. Like that was a massive problem.
PK is calling me out with my CJ Gunn comment.
Get him, PK.
Crean. Like, who is this guy?
I want to point out that
deal?
somebody made a comment to us like, guys, Tom Crean's been gone. Like, drop the conversation. I tried to move on from the Tom Crean conversation.
No, it was
about
me. It was
12
me being
times.
a maniac. I was just being a maniac. You were
like blinders. You're like a horse.
Because it's like goes against my whole philosophy of just like, looking back and kind of his resume, he was kind of flailing out. So maybe I was stepping out of line, but like sustainability is important when it comes to, getting to the championship level. And, so firing your coach, I think, I feel like people like to fire their coaches on a whim as opposed to actually putting thought into it. And, if you want to start over, you just want to start over, but you got to accept what might happen when you decide to start over, and that it might be the grass is not always greener.
I can't believe we're still talking about Tom Crean.
But I was just saying my philosophy as a whole. I didn't even say Crean.
Okay.
Well, now
John said, I hope Sig learned from the OSU game because I timed the snap count from my couch when Lynch moved his left arm. That's so funny. I think they did learn. I'm with Gruden. Just eliminate the clap. Just go to have the quarterback scream. I'm with it. Brad, you got any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. We are loaded. We are fucking loaded. We're going to be so much better than we were last year. Excited to talk about the new commitment that we got. Obviously, we're ramping up the football season. So, like, IC basketball is on the back burner. We could do a quick little episode. I still got to crunch the tape on him because, I'm not going to, like,
I'm
crunch
thinking
tape
like
on a guy if he's not committed yet. I'm just not going to do it.
I'm thinking 15, 20 minutes, like Wednesday or Thursday night, the video comes out where it's just like, here's what's happening in basketball. Here are the thoughts. And it doesn't get just like crammed in with football. Cause there's just so like, you're right. We're ramping up towards the season. Like I had 4 pages of notes for this show and 3/4 of it was football. So it's like, there is no off season for the voice of college football.
There is no, I mean, as of right now, we are a football school. Obviously that hurts to hear. Like, we can still have a good basketball team being a football school, guys. Look at Bama. Look at Auburn. Look at I don't know, name a school. Name Purdue. They're at its core, they're a football school, and they haven't been good. It's been kind of reversed. It's kind of like we've done like a little parent swap with Purdue. Like we're the football school and they're the basketball school. I know that might be hard to hear, but that's just the reality of the situation. And hopefully, this Prince Moody guy will be the catalyst of change to get us back as the premier basketball school at Indiana.
I love it. Please share.
Great state of.
Please like, share, comment, subscribe to Indiana at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. You can follow us at Indiana VOCFB on Twitter. Follow me at Alec Keyser. Follow Brad at Bradley_Loomis8. The podcast comes out on Spotify, on Apple. You can follow us on Instagram. I'll have an article coming out on vocfb.com probably next week. Again, that's going to be one of the bigger things that I've written. We'll talk basketball later in the week, so be on the lookout for that. And appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Thank you to Mark Rogers for coming on. Appreciate the conversation he had with us, talking Indiana football and messing around with us. And John's right, baby. 60 days to kick off. We'll be back next week.
We're so close. You think Mark's going to actually invite me to the Phil Steele show? I hope so. That'd be awesome. My dreams would be like, I'd be like, good. I'm like, life, honestly. I'd be like,
go Hoosiers.
Met the guy. Go Hoosiers.
Go Hoosiers.